You can't just expect me to go along with this. What other choice do we have?
They know.
What I saw was work and play at work and fun. Mrs. Cosby was a frequent visitor to the studio. She was there a lot.
The Cosby Show, once a symbol of wholesome family entertainment and cultural pride, is now at the center of a shocking and deeply unsettling storm that has ripped apart the polished image it maintained for decades. As Phylicia Rashad, known to millions as the graceful and composed Claire Huxtable, found herself thrust into a tense and emotional confrontation with her on-screen daughter Tempest Bledsoe, an encounter that spiraled into an extraordinary drama only hours before the sudden and mysterious death of Malcolm Jamal Warner, who had long been regarded as one of the show's most beloved and respected stars. The night in question was meant to be a reunion of sorts, a gathering where old friends could reminisce and share laughs, but what should have been a warm evening quickly transformed into a suffocating chamber of sharp words, unspoken resentments, and decades of unresolved tension, with Phylicia, who had always been the embodiment of dignity, allegedly losing her composure as she confronted Tempest about matters that had been festering in the shadows for over 3 decades. Matters involving not only personal slights, but also serious accusations of professional betrayal, including whispered claims about misappropriated funds, deliberate career sabotage, and manipulations behind the scenes that may have altered the course of multiple cast members' lives. Eyewitness accounts suggest that Phylicia did not arrive empty-handed, but instead came armed with a trove of physical evidence, thick folders of printed emails, handwritten notes from the early 1990s, and even an old VHS tape, all of which she allegedly claimed would expose Tempest's role in a series of betrayals that undermined both trust and livelihoods. And when she began presenting this evidence, the atmosphere in the room shifted from awkward to electric, with Malcolm trying desperately to calm the situation, stepping in between the two women as verbal barbs flew, and the mood grew increasingly volatile. According to sources, it was during this chaotic exchange that Malcolm, clearly distraught, turned to Tempest and delivered a devastating final statement that she had taken everything from him, words that now haunt those who heard them, given that within hours, Malcolm would be found lifeless in a swimming pool, his death officially labeled accidental drowning, though many close to the situation and countless fans online have found this conclusion too neat, too convenient, and far too suspicious given the events that immediately preceded it. The online reaction was swift and intense, with fans dissecting every known detail of that night, scrutinizing old interviews for signs of tension, and even claiming to have uncovered audio from the confrontation in which voices, allegedly belonging to Phylicia and Tempest, can be heard arguing about past betrayals, with Phylicia accusing Tempest of twisting stories and misleading others to her advantage. Further deepening the mystery is the report that just days before the gathering, Phylicia had received a package containing a USB drive, a bundle of old letters, and the aforementioned VHS tape from 1993, with unverified claims circulating online that the content of this package reveal not only personal conflicts, but also contractual breaches, suppressed scandals, and an abandoned spin-off project that Tempest allegedly maneuvered to secure for herself at the expense of her co-stars. Insiders whisper that network executives of the era were well aware of tensions within the cast but chose to suppress the truth to protect the show's reputation and profitability, creating a culture where grievances were buried rather than addressed. And now, with Malcolm gone and Phylicia reportedly hiring a private investigator to uncover the full truth, facade is beginning to crack under the weight of both public curiosity and internal suspicion. In the days following the tragedy, Phylicia has avoided media appearances entirely. Tempest has withdrawn from public life and cancelled scheduled engagements without explanation, and fans have transformed into a relentless online investigative force, pooling resources to analyze timelines, gather possible witnesses, and connect dots that, in their view, point towards something far more sinister than an unfortunate accident. Despite official statements urging privacy and patience, the public remains unconvinced, fueled by a belief that this tragedy is not an isolated incident, but rather the culmination of a decades-long web of lies, betrayals, and hidden agendas that have festered since the show's heyday. leaving a once united cast fractured, a cherished legacy tarnished, of unanswered questions that no one in the inner circle seems willing or able to answer. The aftermath of Malcolm Jamal Warner's sudden and deeply suspicious death sent tremors not only through the tight-knit world of The Cosby Show alumni, but across the entertainment industry at large, as the ripples of that fateful night began to spread and new layers of intrigue surfaced. In an ever-expanding cast of figures, from former co-stars to behind-the-scenes crew members who had once kept silent about the internal dynamics of one of America's most beloved sitcoms, in the days that followed, whispers became murmurs and murmurs became public statements, albeit careful ones. As people who had worked on the show began to recall moments that, in hindsight, seemed to hint at long-standing animosities between Phylicia Rashad and Tempest Bledsoe, tensions that were carefully kept off camera but apparently simmered for years behind the scenes. According to accounts that have emerged, disagreements over everything from creative direction to promotional appearances often placed the two women at odds, with Phylicia, known for her disciplined professionalism, allegedly growing frustrated with what she perceived as Tempest's ambition-driven maneuvering and lack of transparency, while Tempest reportedly felt overshadowed and dismissed, struggling to carve out her own space in a production dominated by bigger personalities. The resurgence of these old stories in the wake of Malcolm's death began to form a mosaic of unresolved grievances, and with every piece added, the public's picture of what may have happened that night grew darker and more complex. Central to the swirling speculation is the mysterious package Phylicia received just days before the gathering, with insiders claiming that the USB drive contained confidential memos, production schedules, and correspondence between network executives that hinted at both financial irregularities and behind-the-scenes manipulations that could have sabotaged certain cast members' opportunities, including Malcolm's, whose career took unexpected turns after the show ended. Several former crew members have come forward anonymously to claim that the VHS tape, if it exists, might contain rehearsal footage or off-camera interactions that directly contradict the family-friendly narrative promoted by the network. Footage that could reveal moments of calculated exclusion, heated arguments, evidence of deals being struck in secrecy. While these claims remain unverified, the mere possibility of such material has electrified the online investigation community, with some internet sleuths even attempting to track down former staff who might have been present during the tapings in early 1990s. Meanwhile, Malcolm's death continues to be dissected from every possible angle, with independent analysts pointing out inconsistencies in the timeline of his final hours, questions about who last saw him alive, and even speculation about whether he had been drinking or was under unusual emotional strain. Friends close to Malcolm have told reporters that he had been more withdrawn in recent weeks, confiding to some that he was under significant pressure related to unresolved personal and professional matters, pressure that may have been directly connected to whatever confrontation took place that night. As the swirl of suspicion intensified, Phylicia's choice to retain a private investigator became a focal point, with some interpreting it as a sign that she suspects foul play, while others see it as a defensive move to protect herself in case the narrative turns against her. Tempest's complete withdrawal from the public eye has only fueled further speculation, as she has issued no statements, offered no tributes to Malcolm, and made no attempt to counter the growing allegations, an absence that many interpret as either strategic silence or tacit acknowledgement of guilt. The entertainment press, for its part, has been treading carefully, often citing unnamed sources and framing reports as rumors or claims to avoid legal repercussions, yet the very act of sustained coverage has ensured that the controversy remains firmly in the public consciousness. Even more intriguingly, a small but vocal group of fans has begun re-examining the later seasons of The Cosby Show for perceived signs of discomfort, disconnection between the actors, pointing to subtle body language, lack of eye contact, or unusually scripted interactions as possible reflections of real-life strain. All the while, speculation about the role of network executives looms large, with theories suggesting that those in charge The show's peak years may have been complicit in burying conflicts to protect both the show's brand and its financial success, going so far as to pressure cast members into silence or offer quiet settlements to keep grievances from surfacing. These theories have been bolstered by references in alleged letters from the package, which some claim contain veiled threats about career stability. In exchange for loyalty, the longer the silence from the central figures continues, the more space there is for these theories to grow, creating an atmosphere where fact and fiction blur in the minds of the public. The case has also drawn in legal experts, some of whom have begun discussing interviews, the potential criminal implications if any connection between Malcolm's death and the confrontation can be proven, while others point out the practical difficulties of building a case without concrete evidence. Law enforcement officials have remained tight-lipped, offering only brief and non-committal statements that the matter remains closed. Unless new information emerges, a position that has done little to placate those convinced that the truth is being deliberately hidden. Behind the scenes, it is rumored that certain parties connected to the show are considering releasing statements or even sitting for interviews in the near future. Though whether these will clarify or further complicate the situation is anyone's guess. For now, the public is left with fragments: a heated confrontation, the mysterious package, a sudden death, and a decades-old web of interpersonal politics, and it is these fragments, pieced together by fans and amplified by social media, that have kept the tragedy alive in headlines and conversations, ensuring that whatever happened in the hours before Malcolm's passing will not fade quietly into history, but will instead continue to haunt the legacy of The Cosby Show, serving as both a cautionary tale about the dangers of buried conflict and a reminder that even the most seemingly perfect public images can conceal shadows deep enough to destroy lives. In the weeks following the explosion of speculation and the mounting pressure from both the public and the media, the atmosphere surrounding The Cosby Show alumni has grown increasingly tense, as every new whisper or leaked detail seems to push the already fractured relationships further toward collapse, and the once celebrated image of a television family bound by love and mutual respect now appears more like a fragile facade held together for decades by secrecy and mutual dependency. Behind the scenes, private communications between certain cast members have reportedly gone cold, with former friends no longer speaking, group text chains abandoned, and trusted intermediaries being used to pass even the simplest of messages. A level of distrust that reflects the deepening divides brought to light by the events of that fateful evening. Several individuals connected to the production have come forward anonymously to describe the early days of the show in starkly different terms from the nostalgic accounts usually offered in interviews, painting a picture of a working environment where competition for screen time, disputes over creative input, and personal alliances determine the trajectory of each actor's career, and where Phylicia Rashad's dignified public image masked a steely determination to protect her own standing, while Tempest Bledsoe's affable charm hid a sharp sense of ambition and, allegedly, a willingness to exploit opportunities, even at the expense of others. These retrospective accounts have only added fuel to the online theories that the confrontation between Phylicia and Tempest was not a sudden eruption, but rather the culmination of decades of accumulated resentment, professional rivalry, and perceived betrayals. The mysterious package Phylicia received remains at the center of much of the speculation, with some claiming to have knowledge of its contents, describing not only the alleged memos, letters, and VHS tape, but also what is said to be a detailed ledger tracking payments, bonuses, and residuals distributed among cast members, a document that could reveal glaring disparities in earnings and perhaps suggest financial favoritism or manipulation. The possibility that such a ledger exists has triggered heated debates among fans and commentators about the fairness of the entertainment industry and the power dynamics that govern it, particularly in long-running, ensemble-driven productions where hierarchies form quickly and are often rigidly maintained. Meanwhile, The question of Malcolm Jamal Warner's final hours continues to dominate conversations as amateur investigators and true crime enthusiasts pore over every scrap of available information, from timestamps on social media posts to supposed sightings on the night of his death, constructing elaborate timelines in an effort to identify inconsistencies or pinpoint moments of potential foul play. Some theories focus on who else may have been present at or near the gathering that night, noting that certain names have appeared repeatedly in unverified accounts, but have yet to be officially confirmed or denied by those involved. Others point to the apparent lack of visible grief from certain individuals in the immediate aftermath of Malcolm's passing, interpreting it as possible evidence of foreknowledge or emotional detachment, though skeptics argue that grief manifests differently for everyone. Adding to the intrigue is the claim that in the days before his death, Malcolm had been making arrangements to meet with a journalist known for investigative exposes on the entertainment industry, a meeting that, according to this theory, would have centered on revelations about the Cosby Show's internal conflicts, financial disputes, and the ways in which certain careers were quietly undermined. If true, implications are staggering, as it would suggest that Malcolm's death may have occurred at a pivotal moment when long buried truths were on the verge of being made public. Law enforcement's continued insistence that the drowning was accidental has done little to quell suspicions, with critics pointing out that the investigation was closed with unusual speed and that no follow-up inquiries have been announced despite the wealth of new allegations and leads circulating online. In response to the growing storm, some former crew members have begun cautiously signaling their willingness to speak, though they remain wary of potential legal repercussions and the backlash that can accompany breaking the unspoken code of loyalty that often exists among long-running productions. This code, once considered a shield that preserved reputations, now appears to many as a tool for suppressing uncomfortable truths, allowing harmful dynamics to persist unchecked. The silence from Tempest Bledsoe has been particularly glaring, with her absence from social media and public events becoming a subject of constant speculation. Some interpret it as an attempt to avoid making statements that could later be used against her, while others see it as a deliberate strategy to let the frenzy burn out before re-emerging with a carefully crafted narrative. Phylicia Rashad, by contrast, has been seen occasionally in public, though she has declined to answer questions about the incident, offering only polite but firm refusals to comment, a stance that has been interpreted in wildly different ways depending on the observer's loyalties. Meanwhile, the fandom surrounding The Cosby Show has split sharply into factions, with some defending Phylicia as a truth seeker unjustly maligned, others portraying Tempest as the real victim of a smear campaign, and still others convinced that both women share responsibility for the toxic undercurrents that have now erupted into view. As these debates rage, a growing number of voices are calling for the release of any and all materials contained in the mysterious package, arguing that transparency is the only way to put an end to the cycle of rumor and suspicion. Whether such a release will ever happen remains uncertain, as those in possession of the alleged evidence are likely weighing not only legal considerations, but also the potential damage to their own reputations and livelihoods. In the absence of definitive answers, the narrative continues to evolve organically, shaped by leaks, hints, and the tireless work of online sleuths who refuse to let the matter drop, convinced that the official story is a carefully constructed fiction. In this way, the shadow of Malcolm Jamal Warner's death hangs not only over his grieving family and friends, but also over the legacy of The Cosby Show itself, which now stands as a cautionary example of how the bonds formed in the intense, insular world of television production can conceal rivalries and resentments capable of destroying both personal relationships and public legacies when finally brought into the light. For those who once watched the Huxtables as a model of familial love and stability, the revelations and the unanswered questions are a painful reminder that worlds we see on our screens are crafted illusions, and that behind every perfect image there may lie a story of ambition, betrayal, and loss far more complicated and far less forgiving than anyone could have imagined.